bar.
That extra gear, the first 3 steps.
Huge strides in the performance.
That I might not be the player I am today.
Welcome to another episode of Behind the Gear. And today we've got a returning guest and Steve Benedetti. And Steve, I always enjoy, obviously we've been buddies for a while, but I always enjoy when you come in because it's always good chats. And if we were mic'd up before we got on camera, would have been some good chats, but some stuff I want to kind of revisit. And for those who don't know who Steve Benedetti is, obviously an entrepreneur, but a guy who played local, hockey here, played junior B here, played CIS here, played a little bit of professional hockey. Just an unbelievable guy, very good looking.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Yeah. But I mean, obviously unreal hockey background and then coached a bunch of guys in the area here, obviously in minor midget AAA, and a lot of guys are playing in the NHL now and
that's crazy.
And having some nice little runs. But, so what are some things that you've been up to? Any kind of cool news, coming out?
Yeah. Well, you talk about, it's pretty cool to see the success that some of the players have had. I don't think that I was a direct correlation with that. I know you get to work with the same guys too, but
so you and I in combination, obviously.
Yeah. But it's exactly what it was.
Yeah.
But I think, kind of leading to what you're talking about, it's kind of interesting to watch the process and see that journey that, so we'll just use Nick as an example, seeing him from a young kid to how he developed, his whole path through junior and now what he's doing in the NHL is, pretty incredible. So it's just that story. So then now outside of hockey, I think the challenge for most guys maybe is if you're defined as a hockey player and that ends, now what? Right. I think that was a real difficult time for me when hockey ended.
Totally.
Just maybe for you too. I'm not sure if you have ever talked about that.
Yeah, no. And I think it's, to your point. So Nick Suzuki is the one we're talking about who's playing in Montreal now. Obviously, quickly before we move on to this, because I want to talk about this, but when you look at guys like him, like his brother Ryan, or you look at Ratcliffe, so Isaac Ratcliffe, who's playing with Philly, but down with their Lehigh Valley team. When you look at those guys, do you see some similarities in the guys that you've coached that have gone on, like the Jake Murrays, these guys that, is there some similarities in the path, maybe different paths they took, but are there certain things that you can say, well, they had this common, they had certain things in common that this is why they got to where they are, even though they're different players, different styles, different skills. But is there anything that kind of pops out of you that?
I think, yeah, they're all obviously different individuals and they have a different skill set, but I think the one constant would be their mindset and how they approach the game. And I would say that none of those players in particular that we're talking about, and I'd throw Mason Millman into this category
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, good call.
They wanted to get better. And these kids were great hockey players at that age, but they weren't, capped by, hey, I'm awesome. It was like, what can you teach me? What else can I do? I want to get better. It was like that constant work ethic. So I think that's the theme of these kids that have been successful. I think people think that they're working hard too. A lot of kids think that way, but these kids were just coachable. They were open to influence. They're not kids anymore, but at the time,
yeah, I
think just being open to learning, I think is the one thing that I think separated them from most.
Oh yeah, I think that's great. I think you're right. I think the work ethic is a big one, obviously, as well. I think one of the things too that, and I've been on this horse for a while here, but is talking about setting your kids up. So you got a daughter, you got a son that's playing a sport. Get people around them that can help them have success, right? And I know a lot of them have reached out to you in the last couple of years and had issues or wanted to talk to you about something. Or you meet them in the hall, and and you've always kind of been a bit of a support on certain areas of their lives, and then a strength coach maybe, or a mental performance coach, or, whatever that is, or whoever those people are, but getting the right people around these young athletes to help them go in the right direction. It's the old school mentality is, oh, I'm a dad, I played, I could do it. Well, that's fine. And that might work to a certain point, but I think it's nice to get some help along the way as well.
I think you nailed it. You need a good support staff around you, a good group of people. I'm a big believer in you're a product of the 5 people you surround yourself with the most. We talked about this earlier, but I think it's challenging within minor hockey because there's a lot of experts out there. We live in a country where, my grandmother's an expert. Everyone knows what to do. Everyone knows the path. Everyone knows how to get there. Yeah. So there's a lot of people, I think, selling information that maybe isn't beneficial to that individual. So I do think it's important to surround yourself with the right group of people. I think that's how you get there.
And I mean, going to what you were talking about just a bit earlier, when you're done hockey. So, and I think a lot of people have a really, really hard time with when they do finish their sport, especially when you played a little bit of pro, or, you went 15, 20 years of playing a sport, then that's what kind of was your identity basically. And then all of a sudden you're done. Now what do you do? And you know, how do you feel those Fridays and Saturdays? And how do you feel those training hours that you were spending so much time training? And, you know, then what do you do as far as like your group? Everywhere you went every season in September, you had 20 guys that you hung out with that were buddies that you were tight with and now all of a sudden you don't have that anymore. Right. So when you did go through and kind of stop playing, came back from playing pro, and, you know, did you kind of have an idea of what you wanted to do as far as a job or as far as a profession or anything like that? Or was it kind of up in the air and just?
I think it was up in the air. I think I was really kind of living in the moment and having a good time, and you never really think too far ahead, which is maybe something looking back at it that maybe I should have done. But I'm grateful for where I am today. So, but I think that that's a challenge. I think like I don't think it matters if you play in the NHL or you finish playing junior B, like you have a passion for a game that you start when you're 4 years old. All of a sudden you're 18, maybe it's done, or 22 or 25, however long you play, then it's over, you know, and then we're all playing in the same, you know, league eventually.
Yeah.
But I think there actually needs to be more education for players and for families around that particular topic, because I just know from personal experiences that a lot of friends of mine have struggled with the end of hockey and what comes next. So I think that's a challenging thing. So for me, yeah, it was really like, oh, what do I do? And I was grateful for the path that I went on. I went to university, I got a university education. So I think that certainly helped in terms of, you know, relationships and contacts that I was able to establish afterwards. Yeah.
I think too, like, I think some of that falls on the parents as well. Like when you do have a young son or daughter that's really invested in their sport and spending a lot of time in their sport, that's totally fine. But you and I both know as well, like when we went from playing university hockey to going to play pro, how much more time did you have in your hands? Like in the afternoons on a practice day, you know what I mean? So I was always encouraged by my family to like do something, read a book, you know, like maybe look at personal finances. And they were not giving me massive direction, but I'm just saying as a parent, like, hey, here's an audiobook, check this out if you get a chance, or hey, here's.
I think we live in the best time for information.
For sure.
We can dive down that path, because I read tons of books, and just like I'm trying to consume as much information as I possibly can. 18-year-old me was not that way, you know, so I like talking to these kids, and you know, we can kind of even get into hockey IQ. I think it's important to work your brain, and I'm not sure that there's enough like hockey IQ out there for these guys. I think they're super talented at what they do, but you got to work that aspect. And I think, you know, take math, take science, like be creative, do other things. Don't just invest in this one particular path, like diversify yourself a little bit. And I think it'll make you a better, well, clearly an all-around person, but probably a better all-around hockey player too.
I totally agree. Yeah. And I think the one thing too is when you start diversifying a little bit and you're reading books on finance, or you're reading books on culture, you're reading books on religion or whatever, history, doesn't matter what it is. I think that you've obviously developed your personality and who you're going to be, but you also develop different interests, which at the end of the day, maybe you're not identified as just a hockey player. You know, you kind of start to understand that, you know what, when I'm done playing, or I've got something else I'm going to fall back on. I got another whole area here that I love. I want to do research on this, or I want to get involved in a company that works on this, or whatever that is. Right. And I think the more you educate yourself, the more you see that, man, the world's not just hockey or not just that sport.
Well, and I think too, like the access to information that people have today is a lot different than when you and I were kind of coming up. So I think, you know, whether it's hockey players or football players or, you know, mathematicians, whatever it is, you can kind of see that there's another world out there and information's freely available. So I think that aspect is really important for the young kids growing up that we didn't have access to, but you should take advantage of it. You talk about when we were done, you had tons of free time to play video games all the time.
Yeah.
There is esports now, right? Like,
yeah.
I'm not really pushing that path.
I think it's always a scary one.
I think it's pretty tough skill. Like those guys that are the top gamers in the world, they're playing 14, 15 hours a day, and they've been doing it for a long time.
Yeah.
Like,
and crushing like 10 Red Bulls a day. It does
compound. Yeah. Like, you know, they're elite at what they do. Like you're elite at a sport.
Yeah.
But I think just to your point about information, taking it in, I think that's what will help you after you're done the game.
Yeah.
No doubt.
Yeah. No, and I think it's something, you know, there's nothing better than meeting a young man or a girl who can speak and have a conversation on a variety of different topics. Right. And I know when I was 19, 20, I was probably one or two topics I could really speak about, you know.
But I mean, like there's podcasts. I mean, there's like
so
a great
much
podcast right here, but there's so many podcasts where there's information. If you don't love reading, there's audiobooks, like, even when you're working out, you can listen to a book. If you're going for a walk or a jog, like you can just constantly retain information. And I'm totally obsessed with that today.
It's funny you say that, man. I was thinking about this yesterday. I was vacuuming because I partake in our household chores, and I'm a new age man. No, but I've constantly got headphones in, like, and if no one's around, obviously, but my family's out or doing something, I'm cleaning, or I'm always listening to something, either whether it's a book or a podcast or something. And I was thinking about this. I'm like, is this kind of crazy? Like, you think of going to someone's house, you go to your grandpa's house and you always had music on, or you go to your aunt and uncle's house, they always had the blues playing in the background. And so for me, I'm like, that's kind of what I'm basically doing. But I love music, don't get me wrong, but I just feel like I don't get a lot out of music aside from maybe getting emotional, like pumped up on something or whatever. But I like to learn a little something. So that's where podcasts come in, or audiobooks, where I can give me something.
Well, somebody told me to, like, when you're reading a book, essentially that's not a book that somebody wrote for a week period of time in their life. That's of a decade of experience that they are taking and that they're sharing with you. And then now you're able to essentially download 10 years of information that this individual wants to share, and then use it to your advantage. And then if you keep doing that, from book to book to podcast, because, everybody who comes on here probably has an experience that they want to share. Like, there's going to be information, little nuggets that you can take from here to there, and then you can essentially download it and use it to your advantage. And I think, like, as soon as you can figure that out, then you're going to start having an advantage on people.
Yeah. And if you're a young guy or girl right now that's, kind of playing a minor hockey sport or minor sport, doesn't matter what the sport is, and you take advantage of some of the stuff that you see, and rather, like, the one thing with like Instagram and Snap and all this stuff, these 10, 15-second clips of some junk, some decent stuff, obviously, but go down some of those rabbit holes sometimes on information and see what you come up with, and do your homework on different things, and try to, cultivate some new experiences when you are, rather than just taking in information at face value, like we always do.
You bring a good point there about like junk though, because I think that there's so much stuff out there, and I'd be curious to pick your brain on this, but like, how do you advise someone on like, hey, this is like really good advice, or this is super gimmicky and won't really be applicable to what you're trying to do? Because I noticed that from just my perspective, like, because we talk about hockey IQ again. I think there's a lot of stuff that's out there today that people kind of drink the Kool-Aid, and it's not really beneficial for them. And there's other things that's like super powerful that they should really be subscribing to and listening to, that maybe not getting the same exposure.
Yeah. And I think a lot in a lot of different aspects of life, not just hockey or sport, but sometimes simple is better. So when you see stuff online that's, real crazy and it has different, tangents on and stuff, I think sometimes that's just noise, you know what I mean? But I think whatever it is, I think you got to research it a little bit. So if you get something that you like, for instance, everybody's getting these like keto diet, keto this, keto that, or, that's fine. And that may work for some people, and it may be an unbelievable diet or unbelievable lifestyle for certain people, but research it a little bit, see what lifestyle you have, yourself, and then research it. Don't just, I'm done with carbs, man, I'm just going to hammer protein, I'm going to get on the ketogenic diet. Like, it doesn't make sense. So I think doing a little bit of research when you do, I mean, for instance, as silly as it sounds, I bought a video camera to record podcasts, do things with. I know how to turn it on. Like, I don't know anything about it. So I found out like what the best ones would be, research some, YouTube clip them. Yeah. Now I want to get a stabilizer, which means that you can walk with it. And so if I'm on the ice, it's not bouncing around. Well, I don't know anything about a stabilizer.
Right, you just go down the rabbit hole.
Yeah. So I spend an hour or two, over the next couple of days researching this stuff, figuring out which one's good, and then making hopefully a somewhat informed decision. And then
that kind of leads me down the path of like how you're not afraid to fail. Right?
For sure.
You're open to trying different things. And I think you have to be the same way with young hockey players, as an example. I think some kids are so nervous about making a mistake and different things like that. I think you need to have an open mindset and kind of a growth mindset, if you want to call it that way.
Yeah.
And I think that's how you get to find new opportunities.
For sure. Yeah. No, I totally. Yeah. And I think, I believe you and I talked about this before, but David Goggins, I just brought him up the other day too, but he's a motivational guy. If you haven't checked him out, check him out. He's awesome, man. His
book's probably one of the best books I read last year.
Yeah, it was a bit of a game changer for me, as far as not like every minute of my life, but just little things. Like, I remember after I read this book, and for anyone who hasn't read it, it's more about just like basically toughening your mind and callousing your mind. And when you think you're about to quit, and go harder, go further, push yourself a bit. And I remember like the day after I read it, I went for a jog, and I was going to jog, let's say 3 miles. Well, then I went like 3.5 and it was just like, it wasn't long, but it was 100% because of him. I was like,
you got to read it every day.
yeah, it's in my head, just telling me, come on, you can do it. But it was this, little things like that and kind of pushing forward a little bit more,
to that point, like, his story, I think, is incredible, and it's not the same story that everybody has. It's a pretty extreme story. But there's a lot of inspiration. I wouldn't use motivation. I think there's a lot of inspiration in his story for anybody, depending on what level you're at. And so, his threshold was, even when you're gassed and you want to quit, like you're really only hitting the 40% mark. And I think that that's really powerful on whatever that happens to be, whether it's work related, if it's sport related, whatever you're doing, you can always do a little bit more. And I think that, when you start following like the greatest people at whatever capacity they're doing, whether they're a CEO or they're a, sports legend, they have that ability to go further than most people.
100%. And I think, even as you're going through, like when we went through training and things like that, you'd see guys shut down early. Like you'd see teammates shut down early. And maybe I was one of them sometimes too. I don't know, but I know that was one of the things that you could really differentiate people on how hard they push and how, little they bitch and how they just put their head down and do the work. And maybe they ask informative questions. I'm not saying you got to be just a guinea pig and go through everything, but at the same time, you're asking questions, but you're putting the work in. And
I think because David Goggins, I think like his big message too is being uncommon of the uncommon. So I think a lot of it has to do with language and how you can motivate yourself. Because, clearly if you do some sort of exercise or anything, you're going to fatigue and you're going to feel uncomfortable. Just pushing yourself a little bit further and a little bit further. And then you'll realize that you can get to that threshold and then you get to that threshold. I think sometimes too, people feel like you got to go like your run, you maybe want to run 10 miles, but like if you just go a little bit
for sure
every single day, what does that look like over a year's time?
Yeah. No, I think that's a good point. It doesn't, you're right. It doesn't have to be all right now. You kind of build to what your capacity is and kind of try to keep pushing that bar a little bit.
And I think like that, like if we want to talk about hockey players, but I think that's the biggest way to get an advantage over anybody else is just time. Like put in the time, but put in more time than everybody else. But it has to be the right time too. So that's where you kind of get back to who are you surrounded with? Like who's giving you real information? But to me, like, my nephew's an 06, so you see these kids and I've seen them their growth in 2 years is incredible. And some of these kids are phenomenal, and I think like, well, they're still a few years away from their draft year. And whether the top player on the team, the middle player, the bottom player, if they're not even on the team yet, I still think that there's a huge group of people that could take advantage of the path over the next 2 years if they just put in the time.
Yeah. And I agree. And I think some of the players maybe that are listening, or the parents are listening, and their kids maybe like that fifth defenseman right now. Yeah. Well, that fifth defenseman might go on to play way further than the top two defensemen on that team, right?
More often than not, that's what.
And
happens.
If you look at your midget team, or I look at my midget team, and you had a chance to play college hockey, you got a chance to play a bit of pro. Like how many guys in your midget team did? Like probably maybe a handful, maybe none. So the thing is, but I know you and I know myself. I know I worked hard, and I probably worked a lot harder than some of the guys that I played with growing up. And that was the only reason why I had success, is because I was willing to put in the hours and put in the time. And nowadays, compared to even when you were young and I was young, we work stupid. Like there's no doubt I worked way too many hours of dumb stuff, like probably way too many hours of bench press and way too many hours of arm curls or whatever it was, right?
But beach body.
Yeah, totally. But and now what's that? Yeah. But nowadays, I mean, you can streamline that so much more and have more effective hours, and more, hours are going to contribute better to your success,
Yeah, I agree.
Especially if you research it and you kind of know what's going on,
Yeah, absolutely.
But moving forward, kind of where you are now and kind of what's going on with kind of your gig. I know that you've got, kind of, before we get into what you're doing now, I want to talk about when you were done, we talked about kind of what profession you want to get into and what you were going to look at doing when you were done playing hockey. So what was kind of your first job out of playing pro? What was the first thing that you did?
It was in sales actually, which was good. Like I would say that socially, I've always been pretty good at talking with people. And so I think that helped. I had no background in sales. I was coming from being a hockey player, and now what?
Yeah.
So I got an opportunity to work with a tech company that was based in the US, and they had developed a new technology. So it was kind of like a instant intro to the startup world. right out of the gate. Introduced to that.
I was going to pop your mic up just because you're, even if this comes, no, you're good.
Good.
You got a great voice. I want to hear it better.
Yeah, thanks, man.
There you go.
Yes,
that's good. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was my intro to, the tech startup scene. This would
Yeah.
have been, this is over 10 years ago now. And then, essentially into sales.
Yeah.
And then what does that really look like? So then diving into sales and building relationships.
Yeah.
Building relationships. And then kind of navigating those waters. And then it's amazing. We were talking about this before, if you kind of look back and track your course, how far you can go in a certain period of time. If I would have thought back 10 years ago to where I am today, I don't think this is the vision that I thought I was going to have, but I'm so grateful for it. And there's been some ups and downs along the way, but it's taught me so much. So my kind of, course of action is like, I'm in technology now, and I'm, building a technology, and we can talk about that later. But, my first job was in sales, and really what I took from that was relationship building and networking with people, and not necessarily being, I wouldn't say like afraid to call. Like I would reach out to somebody one time and then be like, why didn't they get back to me?
Yeah.
Do they not like me?
Yeah.
People are busy. And so they could kind of develop a method and, kind of staying in touch with people. And I was always fascinated. And this is probably like pre-LinkedIn, really. Like I was always fascinated by who's connected to who and how do they know each other. And that was just something that I was just passionate about. And I kind of ran with that. And it's kind of like how I essentially built up a solid network of people and connections that I'm still in touch with today.
Oh, it's cool. And that's one thing I want to talk to you. I want to ask you some specifics on this, because it's not easy to build up a network, or it's not easy to, I want to get a job at London Life. I want to get a job at the city. How do I do that? Well, I could drop a resume off, which is great. Or I can find out that my Uncle Bob knows this guy, John, who's one of the managers at the city, and I can call him. And, so that way is an easier way to get in and get at least a talk or an interview. And you've done an unbelievable job over the last bunch of years, especially recently, at building up a nice network of people and getting to know new people and building up that kind of community that you have now. But how do you go about doing that? Like, are you calling buddies that know people? Are you, I know there's a variety of different ways that you probably go about it, but let's say you want to get to know that guy or that girl because she owns this and she's gone through a startup before and you've heard of her. How would you go about kind of chasing him or her down?
Well, I think it's a process.
Without being creepy.
Yeah. I was going to say, like, I think there's a very fine line. Yeah. Like, to me, it's a process. And to me, it's about the reputation that you create for yourself. And then a lot of times you get introductions. I mean, if you're like, be a good person and be a reliable person and be a respectful person. And if that's who you are, then I would imagine that you would have no trouble introducing me to other people.
Yeah.
But if I was, shady, or I wasn't reliable, or I wasn't doing things, then why would you want to go to bat for me and introduce me to somebody else? So I think introductions are extremely powerful. Like there's a lot of people in my network that I would be happy to introduce people to. And there's like some people I'd just be like, I don't want to burn that bridge.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, because that's a really strong connection that I believe in. But to me, character, like it really comes down to character.
Yeah.
And so a big thing for me, is just being true to myself, self-awareness, how do I treat other people? I want people to treat me the same way. And like, to me, that's my core, essentially just being a good human being. And then from there, it just kind of takes you down this amazing path of people.
Yeah.
And, like you can cold call people. I don't know that it's the most successful way of doing things.
You gotta name drop though. If you're gonna cold call somebody, you gotta have a name in the back pocket.
Yeah, I think name dropping always works. Like, I'm not a big believer in name dropping. Like your first instinct is like, right. And then like sometimes that can really burn you if you don't know the names you're dropping. As
for
well
sure.
As you do, right? I know that, and I've been in those situations where people throw a name out and you're like, okay, and then you go the other way because you do know that person and have no idea who that individual is who's name dropping. So
totally,
networking has always been a fascinating thing. I also think today though that it's way easier than it was 10 years ago.
Definitely.
You can have Instagram, you can DM anybody.
Yeah.
DM 100 people. And if one person gets back to you, awesome.
Yeah.
I think that David Meltzer, I don't know if you know David Meltzer, he's someone that I follow on social media, but he has this theory about, if you knew you were 25 no's away from your first yes, how quickly would you go after those no's? You know, and I think like it's just a different way.
Interesting,
It's a
yeah.
very interesting way of looking at things because if you know,
I'd go at them pretty quick.
yeah, but
Bang out this
people
afternoon.
now are very afraid because they don't want to get shut down. I mean, essentially, when someone says no to you, they're saving you a ton of time
Mhm.
by not wasting your time.
Yeah.
Right. So like I respect that and I love that. So for me, if we use this theory, if I've got 22 no's, well, I'm 3 away from a yes,
Yeah.
essentially. And so I think you gotta be brave enough to get out there. And I think the other thing too is just like go to events, network with people, but you have to be confident in who you are. And I think that comes with a number of challenges. Just like we take it back to hockey, confident players perform better than someone who's a little more timid. But
For
I think
sure.
this is something that you build over time and that, I have a routine of things that I do every day. Like I call it my 1% list, let's say. And I make sure that I'm hitting those 1% things. So I'm up early, I'm crushing out a workout, I'm doing certain things. So before the days even started, I feel like I got an advantage on everybody, and if I do that every day, well, then where am I going to be in a year from now? So I think that, the networking piece is just one piece of many subsets, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's definitely interesting. Now, let me ask you some quick, like, little rapid fire questions here.
Okay.
Have you ever personally DM'd anybody for business or whatever, but just cold called somebody on Instagram?
Yeah.
Okay. And any good stories? Not like, did it go pretty good? Did you get a reply on it?
Yeah. Sometimes you get nothing.
Mhm.
Other times you do. Like Gary V, I guess we've talked about Gary V in the past, but he was kind of the one that got me interested in that path. I wouldn't say I'm not a big social media user myself.
He's on the other spectrum. He's on like the far spectrum of he's
Very
all
far.
over. He's impressive, to be honest with you, but he would DM everybody on Instagram.
And I think it's easy for him to say DM everybody because
sure.
of course everyone's going to get back to him. But that was his story too.
Yeah, he wasn't always Gary V.
He wasn't always
right?
Gary V, and his path has brought him there. And I'm sure he DM'd a ton of people before he got a response. So I don't think that's a bad method of doing it. I think you got to reach out to people in whatever vertical that you're interested in. I think generally people do want to help.
Mhm.
That's the one thing that I really think. I mean, there's some people that, have selfish reasons for why they do things, but on the core, I believe people generally want to help other people. So I think you just sometimes got to ask.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. So I did it one time, man. And I'm going to do it more, but I did it one time. Same idea, like just randomly DM'd someone that I wanted to have on the podcast. And the one thing with doing this podcast, I love it. It's been great, but it's always like at the beginning, I should say it was more of I always felt awkward asking people,
Sure.
and then come to find out over, doing a lot of episodes or whatever, people are like, no, I'd be pumped to come on. I'd love to come on and chat, especially if someone's got a good personality and kind of a good story.
Yeah.
So it's been good, but I randomly DM'd someone, ended up getting them on the show. It was awesome. It was really good. Kind of developed a bit of a relationship, like really good guy in that kind of hockey space as well. And to your point, the only reason why I probably didn't do it before and why I was hesitant in doing it is because what if he says no, or what if I look like an idiot?
Yeah.
Who cares?
Creepy Dwayne.
Yeah, who cares?
Yeah, change your profile name.
Yeah, it's not like you're sending creepy messages. You're asking someone to be on a podcast, or hey, I know that you're a professional in this field. I have a couple questions. Would you have a second that can I email you or give you a call?
And I think the other thing too, though, part of that is you have a footprint and you have a reputation of what you've done. Right.
Yeah.
So I think it's different of just, telling everybody, hey, just go DM everybody.
Sure.
That kind of goes back to my character piece. Like eventually everything is freely available today. Like you can research pretty much anybody and dig up whatever you want about somebody. So you have to be very mindful of that. So I imagine if you were to DM somebody, you have a pretty solid footprint, you have a really good background, you're a higher likelihood of getting a response.
Potentially. Yeah. You're right. Yeah.
And I think that's just all part of the process. But I think we live in a day and age where people just want a quick fix.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that's not how things work. So I think it's a process, but I don't think it's, LinkedIn, reach into people through LinkedIn, use your network of people. You'd be surprised at just like the group of people that you're around. Who do they know? And then who does that group know? And it just kind of expands over and over.
Yeah.
That.
No, definitely. And what about kind of doing the same thing on LinkedIn? I'm assuming that you've done the same, kind of reached out to random people that you've seen on LinkedIn.
Yeah, I've reached out to LinkedIn. I don't use LinkedIn a ton
Yeah.
right now for what I'm doing. But yeah, I've certainly reached out, even if it's just like information that I'm looking for. Just like I'm in a different field right now where I'm kind of doing my own thing and I'm, networking and navigating those waters because I'm
Yeah.
thinking of like the 12-year roadmap or 12-month roadmap, even 12 years actually, but you know what that looks like. But I do think it's something that people can take advantage of depending on what vertical it is they're trying to get information on.
Yeah.
And I think that everybody wants to know what occupation they're going to have. Like it could change all the time. Just ask. Like it's okay. Some people will answer you, other people won't. Some people are busy, some people forget. But yes, there's a fine line between being creepy and overbearing. But my point would be just like get out there and talk to people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I definitely agree with that. When you look at different platforms like Instagram, and now you're more like kind of in like the tech space a little bit, and like you said, a bit of a startup. So, where have you had the most success in finding those or making those connections and stuff? Would it be like through email, through phone, through Instagram, through Twitter? Like, is there any way that, or any one or two things that you, or is it more just connections and people that you know and getting people to get those introductions for you?
I think for me, it probably comes from the connections I've made over time. I mean, we're very fortunate to have played a game where you work on a team and you're always around a team of people. And what is that team of people? You know, if you cultivate those relationships over time, you know, I think it takes effort. It takes work to maintain relationships, especially today when everybody's busy. I kind of think of like the circle of people that I'm surrounded with now, come from all different aspects. You know, somebody could have been from maybe somebody that maybe I coached somebody before who knew this person. Like it could have been through coaching. It could have been through a networking event where you just randomly sit beside somebody at breakfast and then you develop a really good rapport because you talk and you find out you have similar interests. So there's a number of different ways, but like you won't find anyone if you don't look.
Yeah. And one thing, this is 100% for me, not for anybody else. So anybody else can stop listening right now. But once you made that connection and you've had that conversation at a dinner party or on direct message or whatever, how do you go about kind of cultivating that relationship a little bit? So kind of, you know, if it's something that you're really interested, maybe they're just like being nice, like, hey, yeah, no problem. Give me a call whenever you want. Or, hey, yeah, here's my card. You know, touch base with me sometime. And they kind of don't think about it, but in your mind, you're like, I really want to get to know this person. They've got some crazy knowledge in what I want or what I need. And, you know, so how do you go about doing that? Is it a follow-up email or phone call? Is it hey, I know you love golfing. I've got a membership here. I got some, you know, whatever. Like, is it?
I don't know for me that it's so calculated.
Yeah.
I'm very grateful, and I'm grateful for the time that someone is giving me. Cause I think that time is the one resource that we can't get back. And so if someone's going to give me an hour of their time or 30 minutes of their time, I am super grateful and appreciative that they did that for me. So I usually follow that up with just letting them know, like, hey, you know, thank you for your time today. And I'm respectful of people's time. I think that's the other thing. Like if someone says, hey, got a half an hour, I'm not going to take 45 minutes. Like, I am like, I'll take the 30 minutes or less. Like I want it to be, and I think people are more likely to give me more time in the future because I'm not wasting their time. And then when it comes to showing up on time, like I don't show up right when we start. You know, I try to get there early, depend on situations, or at least communicate that like I could be. But the follow-up I think is important. I personally kind of log everything. So I, you know, have a date of when I met that person. I usually follow up with just like, you know, I said a quick thank you for your time, something like that. And then, you know, there's usually, I leave that discussion with the next steps. And then we kind of follow through on the next steps. And then, but that's the toughest thing because you're going to talk to different people every day. And sometimes people, you know, forget who you talk to. You're like, oh man, I should have messaged that person. Or, and then before you know it, 3-4 months has gone by.
Yeah.
And I would say that was me a while ago. That's not me today. But you learn, like you get better at a process, you get better at a skill. And so that's a big thing with me. I write everything down. I track everything I'm doing. I have a, you know, timeline of, you know, when did I last reach out to this person? When should I reach out to them again and try and go from there? I don't know that it's perfect, but it seems to be working for me.
And I think that's one of the things though, is it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be what Gary Vee uses or Johnny Smith. It doesn't matter, right? Whatever works for you, I think is what's going to work. You know what I mean? And I think it's trial and error, right? Like you weren't always good at some of the things that you're doing right now. And I've obviously polished some of it up and gotten better at certain things. I think
just be respectful of the other person. Yeah. Again, it goes back to like people wanting to help. If someone's sitting there, you know, there's, you know, clearly they think that they can bring value to the situation, or maybe they can offer you a different path or different advice, depending on what that situation is that you're meeting about or discussing. But just respect other people. to me, it literally starts with that.
Yeah.
And if you're respectful for other people instead of, trying to take from other people, I think the long-term effect of that is very beneficial.
Yeah. No, I couldn't agree more. And I think as, even for you right now, if a young entrepreneur comes up and is maybe wants to start something and asks for your time, you're going to be much more obliged to help that person out if they are respectful, if they are on time, if they're organized, and even if they're a mess behind the scenes, because you and I know as well as anybody, most businesses behind the scenes are a dog and pony show. And as long as the front line looks good and you're doing a good job and your product's good, and, but if you are asking for that time, being respectful for it. And I mean, we say this with our young kids right now, but like pleases and thank yous go a long way when you don't have any money. And for anybody who's starting, not that our kids care about money, but when you're starting startups and stuff, you don't have no money. For the most part, you're in debt or you're borrowing money.
Sure.
So, saying please and thank you and being respectful of people's time and stuff could actually go a long way and get you some extra help.
And like you'd mentioned getting polished over time, I'm not going to sit here and say I'm an expert at anything that I do, but I'm certainly way different than I was a year ago, 3 years ago, 5 years ago. Like it compounds over time as you do it. And for me, I love to kind of mentor kids that I coached, because I have a good rapport with a lot of those players, and then discussing just anything with them, like life. And I kind of reflect back at what I was like at 18 or different questions that you had, and maybe not even necessarily like hockey related. So they may be disasters at certain things or, confused in certain areas. But like, to me, like that's what you really want to do is give back to people and provide knowledge or help or experiences. So I would imagine that, that's what people are doing for me when I'm sitting down with individuals.
Yeah. And I think that's a good way to look at it, because I feel the same way. Like I was very lucky coming up. I was kind of plowing a little bit, maybe on my own, but I met some really good people along the way, and they definitely helped with me getting to where I am now. But then when I do help other younger people that are coming into this business or in this field or into business in general, I enjoy it. Like I enjoy spending 20, 30, 40 minutes with somebody talking to them about what they want to do and how to get to where they want to go. Or, I think like you said, it's kind of almost giving back, but I enjoy that stuff. I don't mind spending that time doing that,
Oh, I love it. I know it goes back to hockey now, but some of the kids we're talking to are hockey players, right? That's what they do. That's how my relationship is with them. And, you talk about goal setting or how to achieve certain things. And, what the dream is, to get to the top of the mountain, but that's really all they see. And you can't climb a mountain by just placing yourself on the top, so it's really about like the steps in the process. And I think that's where I try and provide a lot of value for these guys is, coming up with a plan or thinking about things a little bit differently. Cause this is all like information I didn't have. I'm sure you didn't have the same sort of information either when you're younger. And this is all kind of stuff I'm figuring out now. And I'm like, wow, this would have been good to know.
Yeah. I would have saved you some time, some money and some steps for sure. Right?
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's again, going back to like getting those people around you that can help you make those decisions and save you headaches, save you heartache, save you time.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in mentorship.
Yeah.
I think that, cause people have already walked the walk and they've been there and they, if someone can teach me that what took them 15 years to achieve, and they can mitigate the damage that I'm going to do by making poor decisions along the way, why wouldn't I be open to that information?
Yeah.
So I think that whatever aspect it is in life, that absolutely try and find a mentor, I think is the biggest advice I could give to people.
Yeah, which is great advice. Cause I think, and they're not hard to find, but it is sometimes hard to find good ones, right? Yeah. There's a lot of mentors out there, but you need to find someone that you connect with, that that's going to give you the right advice, obviously. And I think someone that takes time to get to know you, right, whether it's a young hockey player or a young entrepreneur or whatever that is, because everyone's different, obviously, and everyone's going to have different paths and different strengths. So
and when I say mentor, like you can get mentorship in different areas. Like you're not going to just have your guru that gives you, every path on life that you should take. I just think that there's people that they've walked the walk. They have experiences, like soak in those experiences. Just going back to the books you read, like that's another great way of doing it. Like here's information that's available for you. Read it, learn from it. Yeah. Same sort of thing.
Totally.
Yeah.
One thing too and this just came up actually today, I was meeting with a young player who's, wants to play in the OHL, wants to try to play in the NHL. And I'm never someone that's like, the NHL is so hard to make, like probably not going to happen. I have no idea if you're going to play in the NHL or not. You're 13, 14, 15 years old. Nobody can tell you. Depends on, how hard you work. And now if you're playing house league at 13, 14, 15, that's a different conversation. But if you're playing AAA and you're on the radar and who knows, right?
You're close.
For sure. And one thing I was just talking to this young boy about this, I was saying him and his father were in, and I said, if you're going to really make a run at this and you really want to push this, right, it's going to take some sacrifice with time and financially and things like that. But I feel that it's really important. And I'm not from this background. I was from the background where I worked all summer. I trained at night or in the morning. I figured it out. I tried to make money, but things have changed a little bit. And if a family can do it or the kid can make it work, not to say that they don't need to have a job, but you need to put 99% of your eggs in this basket of training, skill development, getting better, mental performance, whatever you need to do. But if that's what you're going to do, not to say that you can't work around that or you can't work at the gym that you're training at, or, there's ways to do it, but you need to really invest your time into this if that's what you want to do. Cause like anything, right now, I bring this back to business, and you and I were talking about this earlier. When I first started my business, I was doing 3 different things. I was a trainer at a gym. I was doing some stuff on the side. I was doing some private lessons at the rink and trying to run a business. It was a gong show. I left to go coach for a year. I came back. When I came back, I said, I'm going to give it 2 years with no other job. So I took on debt, like lived off a line of credit and just try to make ends meet, ran programs. And that was the best thing I ever did because it was hard and it sucked. But after 6 months, after 8 months, after 12 months, after 16 months, and it started to get some traction. And because I was putting all my time and effort into one thing and really hammering on it, then I could start to see that, things started to develop, and holy man, that this could actually be a business. And it,
we were talking about that it's difficult to say no to people. And like I was spread thin a few years ago.
Well, you went through it as well.
I was doing the minor midget team. I was coaching the university team with Clark. I mean, like that's a huge chunk. I was trying to get a business off the ground. You're getting pulled in so many different directions, and you want to help, but you can't do everything the best of your ability. You're trying, but it's not, so I think, being laser focused on whatever your passion is, though. I think that's the big thing with, I don't know, the like minor hockey. I don't know this family you're talking about, but that 13-year-old boy, like he has to be passionate about what he's doing. It can't be mom and dad's passion because it just won't work. So I think like if you're passionate about something, then you're going to be committed to doing something. And I think that's kind of the magic recipe there.
I totally.
Like I heard someone one time, ask me like, are you interested or are you committed? And it's a powerful message, because if you're interested in something, you'll do it, but you will also find excuses and you're like, oh, I couldn't do this. But if you're committed to doing something, you will find a way to get it done. And I think that's a big message that, even to that family, if this individual has a passion and they want to chase it, then go after it. Cause you don't want to look back in a bunch of years and say, oh yeah, I should have tried, or, oh yeah, I was kind of lazy, or I didn't do that. Like if you're going after something, go after it, but put everything you have into it. And then at the end of the day, if you don't make it, at least that you put everything you had into it, rather than look back with a bunch of regrets. It's definitely a challenge. There's a lot of people that are doing it, but you're not going to get there if you're not putting in the work.
Yeah. And for any of those players or people in business, whatever it is, if you put a lot of work into it, maybe it didn't go to scale, maybe you didn't succeed, maybe you didn't make the NHL. I think you can still look back on it and say, man, I worked my tail off and I did a lot of good things, man. I'm proud of what I did, Yeah. And one of the questions I asked this to this young guy, to your point, is how bad do you want it? Right. So how bad do you want to play at that next level? How bad do you want to get this business off the ground? Whatever that person is. But for this young boy, I was like, how bad do you want it? And every kid's like, oh, I want it really bad. I'm like, no. How bad do you really, really, really want it? What are you willing to sacrifice to make this work? Are you willing to sacrifice the parties? Are you willing to sacrifice, going to practice or doing an extra workout session rather than going on a date? What are you willing to sacrifice to make that jump to that next level?
Yeah.
And I think that's applicable in hockey and sport. It's applicable in business. What are you willing to sacrifice? Are you willing to drive a shitty car for the next 5 years so you can fund this thing? Are you willing to, take on debt? Are you willing to live,
sure,
lower than maybe most of the people in the world, as far as like, not having a lot of money, not going on trips, not going on ski trips? Are you willing to do that in order to make this thing go, or at least see it as an opportunity to go?
And that it goes right back to, it's tough to say no to people. But if you're passionate about something, and it's tough, I think when you're 13 or you're 12 or you're 16, or you're 18, like it is tough.
For sure.
For sure. Because there's tons of social pressures that are around you. But I mean, if you look at the people that dominate their sport, sure, like a lot of them have a natural ability, but they also outwork everybody. Like to me, it's a very simple recipe. Yes, you got to have a little bit of athletic ability, no doubt. But if you put in time And the other thing with the time is you got to be doing the right things. You can't just shoot pucks and then hope you're going to have a good shot.
Totally. Yeah.
So I think it's easy, for us, because we have knowledge around like that subject, but what a great resource that family has that they can talk to you about, what should I be doing? But they have to be willing to do it. Like you can't do it for them. I think that's kind of the challenge. So, and that comes with mentorship. Like you can provide it, and maybe you have this issue, you're going to give people a lot of information, but if they don't take it, do you want to keep helping them?
No.
Or is it just, after a while, you're just going to be like, okay, like I've tried.
Yeah. And I'm very like, at every level that I work with, whether it's minor hockey or OHL or pro, I don't hold hands. Like, and I don't think we should, it's, if you want to get better, I'm here, call me. I'll come and visit with you. I'll come on the ice with you. We can chat on the phone, so I think it's got to fall on the player. They got to be accountable for it. And if they really want it that bad, then they're going to, I'm basically offering anything you need. Just let me know and we'll get it done.
Yeah.
If you don't want to take advantage of it, that's totally fine. Then you don't want it that bad. And that's okay.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that. If you don't want to be a player, you don't want that. That's totally fine.
My experience too, I think there's a lot of people that think they want it or that say that they want it. But they're not really willing to do what it takes to actually get there.
Yeah.
I can think of, just being around the minor hockey rinks and you see like families that are talking and, my kid works so hard or he does this, but like, I don't know that. I think they think that, but they're not really doing everything that it does actually take to get yourself to be one of the top players and put yourself in a situation. So again, it just goes back to time and education and learning and like this whole full circle conversation we've been talking about. But
well, it's funny you say that. And again, we can relate this to a lot of different things, but for instance, a young player will come in and minor midget. So they're going in their draft year, they're 15, 16. I want to play in the O. I want to play in the O. Okay, great. Well, what did you do? Like, what have you been doing during the off season? Well, I've been going to Good Life like twice a week and skating with a guy once a week. I'm like, that's not enough. Like, what do you mean? I'm like, that's not enough. Like, no, are you kidding me?
Yeah. It's amazing. Like, I don't know. London's an interesting town now, because of the Knights, and we've got this Knights effect, and there's some amazing hockey players that are coming out of our city. But the idea is like, it's not just London, and I think people kind of get the blinders on for our location and probably every location where they are, but there's somebody else out there that is putting in the time, that's going twice as hard every single day over and over. So like after 5 years, how are you ever going to catch them?
Yeah.
So if you're 15 years old now and you're just starting, you might be 5 years behind somebody already, and it's not that you can't catch up, but it's a challenge. So I think like you got to get that mindset right away. And I think, you work with a lot of players more than I do today, but like there's a lot of entitled hockey players today, or that believe that they're a lot better than they are, and they're not willing to try new things or be afraid to fail. And I think like those kids that kind of subscribe to that and learn that are going to have a more long lasting time in the game.
Yeah. Well, and let's ask why. Like, why does a player feel that they're really good? Why does a good looking girl think that she's way better looking than everybody else? Because she's been pumped up that way, or he's been pumped up that way. So I think a lot of it, again, and I say this all the time, but a lot of it falls back on the parents. And you want your kids to have confidence. You want to be constructive with them. You want to help them out, but you also need to like not be super negative with them, but you need to be able to humble them a little bit, make sure there's some modesty there. I think with most good players or most successful people, there's a confidence with them, right? They kind of walk that line of a bit of cocky and a bit of confident, which is fine.
Yeah.
And I think for any young athlete out there, you need that. If you're going to be successful and you're going to be elite, you need to have that. But as a parent, you need to monitor it as well, and not allow that player to get too big of a head. Or I
think parents have the best intention.
Mm-hmm.
I really do. I really think that they think what they're doing is best for their child. And, obviously you're going to be protective of your child and you're going to provide them what you think is the right advice, but oftentimes it's not really the best advice, and sometimes parents get in the game of, ripping other players or ripping other teammates. Like, what are you trying to achieve? What seed are you planting in your kid's mind when all of a sudden, he thinks that he's better than this teammate, or he thinks that he's better than that teammate, instead of having everybody collectively work together and try and get better? Because if that was the case, the whole team would rise, the whole team would be better. Individually, they would all have more success. So I think there's great parents out there. There's parents that have done it well. Like I just kind of think of my experiences with some of the hockey families we've had, and you can talk about like Suzuki's or Dowdy's or Millmans. I see how they have raised their boys coming through hockey. And to me, there's a direct correlation why those kids are so successful at what they're doing. So if I'm a parent coming through minor hockey, I'm talking to those families and trying to be like, how did you approach this? What did you look at? How did you talk to the kids after the game? Different things like that. Like I'm reading a book right now called Mindset by Carol Dweck. I don't know if you've ever read that.
I've heard. I probably have it downloaded on my Audible.
It's interesting because it talks about like language and how to approach things and how you can have a fixed mindset. So if you tell someone that they're great at everything, well, eventually they think they're great at everything and then they stop, kind of growing versus, instead you should really kind of reward the process and praise the process rather than the outcome and be like, hey, look what your hard work achieved, and it's just a different way of looking at stuff instead of like, oh, you were so good today. It was just like, hey, you worked so hard today, you were rewarded for that. Like, so you understand that like it continues on somewhere. And I think it's just like, sometimes it's no fault of anyone's. It's just how we talk to people. And we feel like you got to praise everybody. Today we live in a society where everyone gets a trophy, but that's not life.
Yeah, definitely not life. No, I'm still waiting for my trophy. Actually.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. Real quick, kind of ended on this kind of stuff, but going through what you're going through now, as far as basically, cultivating your own thing from the ground up, from your, a thought in your head or an idea in your head to now actually having, the starts of something that's going to be usable and user friendly and things like that. What was that process like as far as, was it scary? Was it overwhelming? Was it, when you look back on it now, was it just kind of went day by day and opportunity by opportunity and here I am now? Or was it pretty well thought out, or was it scrambled eggs? Was it just a mess?
Like I've been at this for a long time from, one opportunity to another, I would say, but what I'm particularly working on now, it's been a journey, but I've gotten better as I've gone along. So like, the whole build that we're going through, that piece, is much different than probably I would have approached it 5 years ago.
Yeah.
So I think just the whole approach to everything, just takes you in a certain direction. So I don't know. I wouldn't say that it's been, scrambly or anything. I just think that every single day I am working at getting better and better and better at, the process and kind of learning and being open. And then you kind of like, if you journal and you look back at where you were a month ago, 3 months ago, 6 months ago, 2 years ago, it's fascinating actually where you are. So a lot of it kind of comes down to confidence, kind of comes down to tracking things so you can see your process. Like I'm a big believer in like the 1% theory. So making sure you're doing something every single day, so it's the same kind of mentality with these hockey players. Like I am trying to outwork the competition because I don't know who else is out there that's doing the same thing. Right. So I'm making sure that I'm doing everything I possibly can every single day to stay ahead of that group of people. And that's what kind of, fuels my fire. Yeah.
And I mean, you mentioned something about this earlier, but you're part of your routine. And this is something that's interest to me as far as like anyone that's probably over 35 and working, but part of your routine on a daily or every second day or however you do it is obviously eating right, is trying to get a workout in, things like that. And do you think about this consciously though, about like the better you are in health and shape and mentally, the better the product's going to be, the better the work is going to be, right?
I do now. Yeah. Like, I mean, diet's a big thing.
When did that switch for you though? Cause I mean, you've been working hard for a lot of years, obviously, but when did that kind of switch where you're like, I need to take an hour for myself and work out? And
it's funny because like, I think that, when I was a hockey player, I was working hard at that particular craft, but there was things where I was having a good time too and doing different things. So I wasn't totally, obsessed and focused, maybe how I am today. And then I would say, in the last couple of years, like you kind of get away, like when you're playing, you're training, you have a purpose, you're training because you want to be, bigger, stronger, faster. And, and then you're done playing. You're like, well, what am I training for? Right. But like
for food and beer and stuff.
Yeah, right. For Sunday hockey.
Basically. Yeah.
I'm a good player.
Yeah.
But then something kind of clicked for me, like probably more when I kind of took a break from coaching, because when you're coaching, it's not easy to, you have late hours, you're doing different things. So for me, it was nice to get that break from the game and step away from the game. I actually have a whole different approach, I think, if I came back to the game. So it's been interesting to kind of be on the sidelines and look at things. But in terms of health and fitness and diet, kind of, diving back into that. And because like it's a process, like you want to, if you eat well, your mind is going to operate better. If you sleep well, you're going to be more efficient. If you that's why I like starting my day with, a quick workout, because I've done that workout where most people aren't. So I think psychologically, I just feel like I have an advantage. I do cold showers. Like that's something that I started probably in August. I haven't missed a day now where I have an ice cold shower, but I feel incredible. So there's just like, you'll find different things that work for you. I mean, the whole shower, like it starts off kind of warm and then you kind of dive into it. I'm just not like a freak where I'm just ice cold showers.
I've done it and they actually, they're fine once you get used to them, but at the beginning they suck. Like they're not comfortable, but once you get used to it and they're really good for you, obviously, which I think is one of the reasons why you like to do them. And there's a ton of benefits having a cold baths or cold tubs or showers like that.
For me, it's more psychological. I just feel like I'm,
like your nails.
Yeah.
You don't need hot water.
Yeah.
You're living up in Northern Ontario, just skinny dipping in the lake.
Totally. But it gives you that, like, I feel like the psychological edge that, I can push myself. I can go a little bit further. I can do a little bit more. So although our journey now is not to be hockey players, but we're still, running businesses and trying to, achieve another level. So to me, that's just another aspect of it. Like if I'm not eating well, how am I going to perform? How am I going to think? How am I going to be creative? How am I going to execute on certain things? So to me, like, diet matters, sleep matters, exercise matters, organization matters. It's just like, it's a bunch of different things, but that is not something you just wake up to and then your day is like that. To me, it's a process that has led me to this place. And I'm on that continual process to keep improving on what I'm doing right now.
Yeah. And I say this a lot to like young guys. So I've got a lot of lines that I use, but I tell guys, I'm like, you don't have to be awesome every day. I want everyone to put the right foot forward every day, the left foot forward. I want you to put an effort in, but you don't have to be awesome every day. I'm not awesome as a dad every day. I'm not awesome as a worker every day. I'm not awesome as a husband every day. But I want you to show up. I want you to put some work in. Yeah. Do you have days though, where you like, it becomes 4 or 5 o'clock and like, I did absolutely nothing today.
Never.
Okay, good. Yeah. All right, I'm gonna have to shut this down now because I feel really guilty.
No, like, of course. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and be like, we're unbelievable.
No,
right?
but
like you're
yeah.
a human, but I think the thing that has changed it for me is I have a 1% checklist and I literally make sure that I hit that every single day. Yeah. So, and it wasn't always like that, but now it is. So, but there are days where your days are just busy, where you have meetings or you're traveling or you're doing certain things. So you can't, so you got to figure out a way to get something in. So for me, it's just, I want to make sure that I'm doing at least something.
What are some of the things on your 1% list? Like what are some of the things that you kind of are mandatories or things that you'd like to get done or try to get done every day? Like what are...
Yeah. Like, I mean, there's a lot that kind of focus around exercise. So there's different, like, things that I want to do, or it could be like just planks or push-ups or something like that, because you're not always able to get into the gym every day. I'm a big believer in meditation. I think it's powerful. So I try to like at least get like 5 minutes in. I'm not a guru when it comes to that, but I think it's good to just kind of like detach from situations, gives you a clear head. Yeah, there's a number of different things. Like the cold showers is one thing that's like on my list where I do not miss that one. Cause it's, you shower every day. Why can I not just crank it to cold, take a little beating and just like feel, but you feel great after. That's the crazy thing. I think for me, like the first week I was like, what am I doing? This is stupid. Cause I watched that like Wim Hof, the Iceman. Yes. And I was like, oh, this is so cool. Like, look at this guy. He's doing crazy, crazy things. I'm not doing that, but just the fact of like, okay. And it's just, again, for me, it's just psychological. It's just like, okay, I'm doing this and most people aren't.
For sure. And I think even if mentally in your head, you have, and you feel like you have a bit of an edge, I think that's powerful. Like, I think that's a powerful thing for people to have. And whether it is trying to do something, trying to do something athletic a day or trying to do something, like a cold shower, whatever that is, right? I think it's just kind of creating a bit of an advantage over.
Yeah. And everyone will have their own little tips and tricks or what makes you tick. Essentially, like, you and I are going to be different. We'll have some things that we, we'll totally subscribe to and think that that's awesome. And we'll have other things we butt heads on. But to me, it's just the process. It's just the journey. But if I'm sitting on the couch all day, then I just wasted 24 hours. Yeah. And my whole approach is like, you've got 168 in a week. What can I do with that 168? Yeah.
And the meditating, how did you get into the meditation and stuff like that? Like, was it something that, because I mean, as well as I do, any book you read, any podcasts you listen to, anything with anybody that's successful or highly successful, I'm going to say 80 to 90% of them talk or mention meditation. There's a lot of people, athletes, business people, whatever, that is part of their routine, whether it's daily, every day, every couple of days. How did you get into it, and what did you use to kind of get it nailed down a little bit?
I think reading books. You know, I follow a ton of people on social media that are, you know, CEOs of successful companies or, you know, elite athletes or whatever. There's like, you know, I kind of subscribe to like that demographic that like inspires me, I would say. And they all have that in common, you know? So it's just like, if there's a common trait that if everybody's doing, try it. You know, that's the thing. So like, even like when Game Changers came out, like Game Changers documentary, like, you know, I tried going vegan for a month.
How was that?
You know, it wasn't bad.
You drank the Kool-Aid.
I totally drank the Kool-Aid.
Oh no.
Yeah. But there's actually a wicked podcast on Rogan where he,
I listened to it. It was unreal.
Yeah.
Cause they had one guy on the first time and then the other gentleman came on who made the Game Changers and they were both on. It was unreal.
Awesome. Yeah. And
he was very good. Very good points. And like, I personally love meat and I'll probably never go vegan. My sister was vegan for a while. I know it's difficult. Like you went through it. It's not easy to be vegan, whether you're eating out or eating at home. But again, that's one of those things. And the gentleman, I can't remember his name right now that created Game Changers. Yeah. He was great. He wasn't, yes, he's vegan and yes, he's pro-vegan, but he was like, everyone's different. Like,
I think his process was about educating people on the benefits of plant-based diet. I don't think his argument, like, I mean, the documentary probably takes that stance because he's supporting that argument, but it really was about, you know, plant-based is not a bad thing.
Yeah.
You know, so I'm definitely not vegan. I love eating meat, you know, and I'm not going to stop, but you know, do I have a lot of plant-based foods while I'm, you know, eating? For sure. Yeah. To me, it just makes sense.
Totally.
So,
yeah. But again, like doing stuff like that, the meditation, the going, you know, trying out vegan, trying out being a meat eater for a couple of weeks or a month, like whatever it is, I think it's important to like go through these trials and tribulations and see what works for you and what doesn't work for you. And, you know, maybe taking cold showers just doesn't work for somebody. That's fine.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. Like I certainly wasn't always like this, and I'm, you know, who knows what I'll be like in a year from now, but I'm totally open to trying new things and just expanding and really trying to have that growth mindset. And, you know, maybe the field that I'm in or, you know, what I'm working in gives me that leeway to kind of explore different possibilities, but I'm also open to it. You know, I think a lot of people would just be like, well, that's stupid. Well, try it. You know, I think like not everything, but I think like, you know, just be curious. So I was just kind of like, I watched that and I'm like, wow, I was curious. Cause like, there's some interesting facts about, you know, the Tennessee football players and how they're all, you know, supposedly vegan and like the success that they're having and how their body performs. And then, so I was like, okay, well, if I eat this way, you know, how will I feel when I'm exercising? Will I feel fasting is another one. I don't know if you fast or anything.
Yeah, like I do. Yeah.
So that's something that I've started to do as well. Like, you know, like a 16-8 type of thing. And again, it was just curiosity. And then at first it's kind of tough. And
it's tough. Yeah.
You know, some of the guys that I play Sunday hockey with, they do that. And then you start having conversations with people and you're like, you know, there's some of the guys in the team that, you know, they'll do a 24, 48 hour fast, you know, once a month or something like that. So but again, like, I think you need to educate. So, okay. So you have that conversation and then you do some research and like, there's podcasts available. There's nothing that you can't Google and kind of find out and take you down a rabbit hole. So then I would research that and the benefits of fasting and kind of go down there and then try it and then see if it works for you.
Yeah.
You know, so.
Well, it's funny. I probably started fasting a year and a half ago now, and same thing, 16, 18, you know, kind of fast and then eating window. And I've loved it. It was hard at first.
Yeah.
It's been unbelievable. I'll try to do a 70s week if I can, but usually 5, you know, the big thing with me is I have young kids and if I'm at home on the weekends, like in the morning, making breakfast for them and getting their lunches ready, it's easy. Cause I'm grabbing coffee or whatever and it's fine. But if we're sitting down and having breakfast, I'm like, I'm not eating. Like, why aren't you eating, Dad? You know,
do you notice a difference?
Oh yeah. Night and day. I feel way better. Yeah. I used to get the afternoon, start just getting tired, and I'm not blaming this on food. Could have been lack of sleep, but I would get that pretty consistently. Yeah. Like 3, 4 o'clock. And I think a lot of people are in the same boat. I don't get that anymore at all. No. My body feels way better. I'm probably trimmer than I was before. And that wasn't necessarily why I was doing it. I just wanted to kind of change it. And there's a lot of good, and I did a lot of research on it and I read a lot and listened to podcasts on it. And wanted
Have
to
you
make,
done like a 24? Or
I haven't done it yet, but now that I'm good at doing like 16, 18 hours, to me, a 24, 48, I'd be able to do it no problem.
Yeah, it'd be
Now that
easy
I
for
know
you.
how to do it, or now that I know what it feels like, because that hunger feeling does suck, but you know, there's ways to get around it, whether you have a coffee or you have a water or you have, you know, teas or whatever. Like,
It's more upstairs than anything.
yeah. And I one of those things, you know, you talk about, you know, for anybody out there who wants to experiment with it, I think it's one of those things also where I feel like sometimes I have a bit of it's not easy to do. Not everyone's going to do it. A lot of people are going to quit it.
Yeah.
So I feel sometimes like you have a bit of an advantage over other people, you know? So it's one of those, like a cold shower or like a workout. You know, if you're working out 3-4 days a week, you're better than probably 90% of the population.
Sure.
Really. You know, you're doing some activity 3-4 days a week and, you know, bettering your body, you're probably better than I'm going to say 90%. Like, you know, it sounds
Now,
crazy.
would you work out on a fast?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'll get up in the morning, work out, won't eat. I love coffee. So I'll usually have like a coffee in the morning with maybe half a cream in it.
Yeah.
And, but I'll work out with it and I won't eat for another 3-4 hours, which I never did. Like growing up, it was always eating that 30-minute window. You have a shake, eat in that 30-minute window. And when I started doing this, I felt great. My strength hasn't gone down. Like,
It's so funny
you know,
because I had the same mentality, like, oh, like before I work out, like I can't have an empty stomach. Like I got to be fueled. And then when I'm working out, if I hadn't eaten, I would kind of be like, oh, it's going to be like a bummer workout, or like, oh, I just don't have it. Or like if it was, you know, playing a game or whatever you're doing, because you like kind of talk yourself into this little frenzy. And then you realize, wow, you can do that. And it's like, you can actually perform better. You feel stronger. Like, I don't know if it's more of a psychological thing or what that is, but yeah, I was curious to see.
No, but getting over that hump, I think, and there'll be the odd time where, like, let's say I've gone a good 16 hours, and maybe like, I'm going to squeeze a workout in here before I eat. Then there's times in that workout, I'm like, maybe like a little tired, a little like lightheaded, you know, so, which is normal, obviously. But I still usually battle through it. I'm fine. And then I'll eat and, you know, it's fine. But I think it's trying it out and seeing maybe a 12-hour fast is good for you and that works well, which is great. And maybe it's a 16-hour, maybe it's an 18-hour. It doesn't really matter, but I think, you know, and maybe it doesn't work for you at all. Maybe you love having, and I was somebody who my whole life had breakfast every day. Yeah. Cereal, toast, eggs, whatever, like every day. Always. My entire life, I never went without breakfast. So that was really, really weird for me when I first started doing it.
I know some people that do it differently too. Like, well, they'll eat their last meal at like 2:00.
Sure.
Right. So there's different ways you can kind of figure it out, but I do the same thing. Like where I don't have breakfast now. Yeah.
You know, and so again, I think it's one of those things where you kind of do it with your lifestyle. So my kids, if I'm home at night and I'm not on the ice or something, we'll eat at like 5:36. Right. So that'll be my last meal of the day with the family or whatever. And then I'll just fast that night and through the next day. What
about water consumption? Like, what do you
drink a lot?
What do you tell the kids you train?
Yeah. Like, I mean, we go off, like, it's hard to tell kids ounces or whatever. Right. So I just say water bottles, but like ideally, you know, you got your 8-9 cups a day that you'd like to get. I mean, if they can drink 3 or 4 water bottles a day, I think it's awesome.
Yeah. Like, do you feel like you perform better when you're extremely hydrated?
And even like one thing I always talk about with all the kids, even my young kids, is like, check your urine. Like when you go to the bathroom and you pee, like see what the color is. If it's super yellow and you're not taking any vitamins, you need water.
There's an issue.
Yeah. So, and I look at my own obviously all the time, but if it's too yellow, I'll go back and I'll pound a water bottle and you know, I want to stay hydrated as much as I can. Obviously.
I find that was a big thing with coaching the minor midget guys, you know, staying hydrated and trying to get them to subscribe to the, you know, you got to drink water or bring your water bottle. It's a tough one because they don't really realize the benefits that you'll have and how you'll think differently, you'll perform differently. So I was just curious on how you approach people.
One thing I started doing too, and this is a small thing, I think I heard this on like a Tim Ferriss podcast or something, but every single morning, I've done this for years, or at least a year and a half now, probably more so since I started fasting, but every morning I'll get up and I'll have like 2 big glasses of water or like a big water bottle full of water. Like even if I'm on the road, if I'm in Hershey, wherever I am, doesn't matter. I'll always like right away smash before I do anything and get up, and I'll have like tons of water, like 2, you know.
You ever do like a salt water?
I haven't done that. And I've heard of some different stuff, like little concoctions guys make that's beneficial and good for you, but I haven't experimented much. Just bland,
just straight water,
tasty water.
That's interesting. I'm just curious because I think that's to me, that's just another advantage you can have as an athlete.
Oh, for anybody, sure. Really. Yeah.
Like,
yeah. Especially young athletes though. Like, drinking water all day. There's tons of young athletes that don't drink enough water at all, right? So I think it's huge. Yeah, definitely, man. I could chat with you all day. Like, Like, honestly, this is great. And before we leave, I'd like to say thank you very much for your time. I really respect the fact you came in here. I hope I didn't take too much of your time.
Thank you. Appreciate it a lot.
No, this is awesome, man. This is great. And one thing I want to leave this with is and I know we're getting close. So when you do come to market and your product is coming out, and we're not trying to be super secretive about it, but it is, something that you've spent a lot of time on, and
Sure.
until it's ready to go, obviously.
Yeah, I'd love to come back and
yeah, because I'd like to
dive
get more
into it.
detail on how the whole process went to vetting it, getting it out, getting it tried out, getting it kind of to market and stuff, which is always
let's do it.
cool. So it's awesome. Thanks a lot, buddy.
Awesome.
All
Thank
right.
you.